Yo, I'm back after my surprisingly brisk read-through of the Trunks and Android sagas of the Dragon Ball Z manga and have separated 16 characters into tiers S through F. Just like before, I am only using the manga as my primary source, with guides and statements as a secondary source. Just to be clear though, my read-through of the manga stopped at chapter 163. For certain characters, I will take their performance later in the Cell Saga into account, if they're basically the same. This really only applies to like 2 or 3 characters though. With that said, let's get into the rankings. Starting our ranking off as the only member of F tier, we have Chiaotzu at 16th place. This might surprise some of you, coming from the previous ranking, as he was considered so weak there that he was excluded, while characters like King Kai, Apul, and the Namekian warriors were included. Honestly, I was really close to including him in the Namek ranking, but opted against it due to him just kind of sucking all throughout the series. That said, I think after his training with King Kai, a year of training with Tien, and then 3 more hard years of training with Tien in preparation for the androids, I think even a fraud like Chiaotzu should have reached a tier of power well above King Kai's own, to the point that he disqualifies him from the ranking. Chiaotzu is still so far behind even the other humans now that he has been relegated to a non-factor in Earth's conflicts. It is for that reason that he sits a tier below them in the ranking. Kicking off E tier, we have Yamcha at 15th place. He shows up for the android conflict when the cast is told that if they do not think they can contribute, they should sit it out. Despite him getting manhandled by Gero, his power is actually quite impressive. Android 19 mistakes him for Goku at first, which is really important because they projected Goku's growth to the extreme in preparation for their fight against him. Yamcha at all being relevant in their extreme projections means that he has a serious level of power here, but likely still less than his human counterparts due to his initial lower floor and narrative throughout the series placing him just below the top 2 humans. For possibly the only time in this series, I am putting Krillin below Tien. Despite his massive gains on Namek and the glaze that I gave him in my Namek ranking, Krillin does not have a lot going for him in the Android Saga. He still shows up for the conflict and chooses to attend the fight between Goku and 19 after Yamcha got no-diffed by Gero, but that's it. Without a proper showing of his full power, I can't place him any higher, but him likely having a higher power than Yamcha and an overall better kit in Solar Flare, Destructo Disc, and in overall skill grants him a higher ranking. Standing at 13th place and the top of E tier, we have Tien. For all intents and purposes, he's more or less on level with Krillin. He was there for every stage of the android shit show, from the initial meeting, where he dodged an I-beam from Gero alongside base Goku, to him failing to knock down a door and eventually getting choked out by Android 17. Funnily enough, him dodging Gero's I-beam alongside Goku is more of a feat than any other human has in this arc, and is actually kind of impressive considering Goku's power in base as well as Gero's own power. However, this was a very casual Gero who was assured of his own superiority at this point, and was trying to mess with Goku more than just kill him outright. Given Gero's projected growth for Goku being at a level that Yamcha could be mistaken for, these casual I-beams were likely not all that strong or fast. That said, we see later on that Tien's Neo Tri-Beam was capable of affecting Semi-Perfect Cell to a greater degree than Android 16's punch that didn't even budge him. This means that if Tien actually used it, this attack could possibly damage even Super Saiyan level fighters, if it lands of course. As we see in Dragon Ball, even a 50% difference in power is enough to lead to a gross difference in strength and speed. While Tien might be able to damage someone like Frieza with his Neo Tri-Beam, in a straight up fight, he is probably getting blitzed and stomped before he could pull it off. Even in situations where Tien might have gotten a Neo Tri-Beam off, like in his brief scuffle with Android 17, he opted to rush in instead, showing that it's not something he immediately defaults to in a battle. Despite that, the Neo Tri-Beam is enough of a trump card to grant him blatant superiority over every other human on this list. The sole member of D tier is Gohan, the 12th strongest character of the Android Saga. Given his ranking in the previous 2 sagas, this is a massive fall from grace. At the same time, you might also be wondering what grants Gohan a whole tier over the humans. Gohan's power from the Namek Saga being at all relevant to second form Frieza is a pretty good baseline that he then stacked 3 years of training with Piccolo and Goku on top of. For reference, the humans, who already had a lower baseline, either trained by themselves, with Master Roshi, or with Chiaotzu. Goku's training was considered too much by both Krillin and Yamcha, and while the anime might have had a scene of Goku dogging on Gohan, the manga gives us no indication that Gohan fell majorly behind here. Obviously, Gohan is not on level with Piccolo or even Goku's base here, but given his own potential, baseline, and training partners, it shouldn't be too outrageous to claim that Gohan is closer to the base Saiyans of this arc than he is to the humans in power. Most importantly, when Piccolo was getting grappled by Gero and he called out to Gohan for help, Gohan actually managed to knock Gero off of Piccolo. Gero at this point had a blast from Super Saiyan Vegeta in him and at least some of Piccolo's energy, and Gohan managed to actually move him. This is far more impressive than Tien's I-beam dodging feat and gives more evidence to the idea that Gohan sits at a level of power well beyond humans, but just below the level required to actually fight a Super Saiyan tier opponent. C tier kicks off with King Cold, the father of Frieza, and the 11th spot on the ranking. Cold is blatantly below Frieza by his own admittance, and his power being compared to Frieza's own suppressed level of power. That said, Cold is the only one, aside from Frieza, who is said to be abnormally strong among his race. He is also the only person, aside from Goku, to have harmed Frieza in his final form, and is strong enough that Frieza felt confident in Cold's ability to back him up against Goku when they went to Earth. All of this pretty convincingly puts Cold on a level of power capable of at least contending with the Namek God tiers. Some among you might be questioning Cold's placement, given his appearance being similar to that of second form Frieza. It is possible that he can transform as well. There is a French guidebook that makes the claim that Cold has transformations, but the same guidebook also puts Cold beyond Cooler and Frieza in strength. This is problematic for two reasons. The first is that Frieza is established all throughout the series as the strongest in the universe, aside from Beerus and the Supreme Kais, of course. King Kai believes it. Beerus couldn't think of any mortal stronger than him, and even Shin used Frieza as a benchmark, not Cold. If Cold was truly stronger, we would have heard about it. The second reason is that Cooler is a non-canon movie villain, meaning that this guidebook only holds weight in the specific continuity where the Cooler movies take place, and at best might have implications for the anime. In a manga-only framework, Cold sits just below Frieza in power. The previous strongest of the universe has now been reduced to the 10th strongest of the saga and a C-tier combatant. This might be controversial to some people, and if that includes you, I only ask that you wait until the next spot to hear me out. His own power has grown since the Namek Saga, by his own admission, and given his previous feats against Super Saiyan Goku, he is still a force to be reckoned with. However, when put up against a full HP, moderately experienced Super Saiyan, he gets washed pretty quickly. Still, his power stands as a universal benchmark for those that come after him, making him more deserving of his C-tier ranking. The first android on this list, Android 19, occupies the 9th spot. It's actually a fairly contentious topic online when it comes to who's stronger between the energy absorption model androids and full power Frieza. Given Android 19's performance against a sick Super Saiyan Goku and Gero's own performance against Piccolo, I can understand why that might be the case, but let me lay this out for you. The Goku who fights 19 is not the same fighter from Namek. He has a year of training on Yardrat and 3 additional years preparing specifically for the androids. Even while suffering from the heart virus, his Super Saiyan power outclasses 19 at the start of the fight and astonished Tien, who has personally sensed Frieza, King Cold, Goku's previous peak, and future Trunks. He does not treat this Goku as beneath any of those benchmarks, and this is really important. Even in a weakened state, this is a post-Namek Super Saiyan with years of additional growth. Now look at 19's durability. In the manga, 19 takes a full force beating from an all-out Super Saiyan Goku, and simply flips back onto his feet. He shows superficial damage at worst, and as we see later when Vegeta dismantles him, 19 absorbs an enormous amount of punishment before finally being destroyed. He even managed to draw blood from the Super Saiyan in the single hit he got on him. Of course, Vegeta let that happen. If that was all 19 had going for him, I could understand why some people place him below Frieza, but 19's energy absorption is an understated trump card that grants him a far greater effective power level than the likes of Frieza or King Cold. Frieza is not outputting the level of punishment that Vegeta, or even a sick Goku, was putting on 19, and as we saw with Goku, it only takes a single absorbed energy blast to turn the tables in 19's favor. Narratively, the story never questions whether 19 and 20 are legitimate Super Saiyan level threats, only if the cast over-prepared for them. While the appearance of the other androids later on disproves that idea, until that point, the working assumption is that only a Super Saiyan, or someone approaching that tier, can handle the androids. When you combine high base durability with an energy absorption mechanic that can multiply his power mid-fight, Android 19 ends up with a much higher combat ceiling than Frieza, even if he lacks Frieza's aura or reputation. That's why he takes the 9th spot. Dr. Gero logically follows from Android 19's spot, sitting at 8th place. His own capabilities sit beyond 19's own, as stated by himself. This makes sense given his own fear of androids 17, 18, and 16, all creations of his that also trump him in power. Despite his superiority over 19, he is still vastly inferior to a full power Super Saiyan Vegeta, and even Piccolo, who thrashed him, despite Gero having a portion of Piccolo's energy and a blast from Super Saiyan Vegeta in his reserves at that point. Despite his poor combat showings, Gero's superiority over 19 grants him the 8th spot. Alright, let me be clear here. This Goku is not a hypothetical, healthy Android Saga Goku, nor is this his power while actively having a heart attack. This is Yardrat Goku, who just arrived back on Earth. The rules of this ranking include the Trunks saga within, and I don't think it's too absurd to claim that this Goku would beat the version of himself that was actively having a heart attack and fizzled out very quickly in his fight against 19. Goku's power is substantial enough to handle Frieza and King Cold, and as covered before, is at least comparable to the level of power that Goku initially sat at against 19, which completely floored him. Despite that, those above him in the tier list simply have more going for them, leaving Yardrat Goku at 7th place and a B- ranking. Also sitting in B tier and ranked 6th, we have Piccolo. Honestly, along with Goku, whether or not you want to grant them a C+ or a B- is entirely up to you, but given Piccolo's performance against Gero and the sibling androids, I'm inclined to believe that at least Piccolo sits closer in power to an Android Saga Super Saiyan Goku than the likes of the Frost Demons or the Energy Absorption androids. This idea is given more credit in the events of the Android Saga, as his power is repeatedly put on a similar level to a Super Saiyan's, whether that be by him being the only non-Super Saiyan capable of fighting the androids, Krillin glazing him and putting him on a pedestal alongside the Super Saiyans, or by him considering 6 Super Saiyan Goku weak. There is a mountain of evidence here that puts Piccolo in a realm of power at least approaching that of the Super Saiyans. Most importantly for Piccolo scaling above Yardrat Goku is the belief that a sick Goku is weak while thrashing 19, and Tien believing that sick Goku is in a different dimension from the rest of the fighters. Piccolo's later matchup against the stronger Gero is not only even more one-sided, but indicative of a power beyond that of the Super Saiyans of the past. At 5th place and kicking off B tier proper, we have Trunks. He kicked off this part of the series by low-diffing the previous peak of the verse and his dad. His power is directly compared to Goku's own, but likely sits at a level slightly below his due to the respect he gives him and the ease that Goku had in blocking his sword. If that was all, Trunks would be 2 spots lower. However, he returns to the future for an unspecified amount of time to gather the necessary fuel to come back and assist against the androids. His power level likely didn't stagnate here, whether through training or battles against the androids. Trunks was not sitting here doing nothing. His gains are clearly not going to be as much as that of the main timeline group, who had 3 years and actual training partners, but this is enough of a start to grant him superiority over Yardrat Goku at bare minimum. Going further, we can look at the group's aftercare after getting slapped by the androids. Piccolo, someone who is not known to be humble, uses Super Saiyan Trunks as the benchmark for how strong the androids are, citing him getting taken out in one shot to hype them up. Tien then goes on to put Trunks on a similar level with Vegeta and a hypothetical healthy Goku, further lending credibility to the idea that every full power Super Saiyan in this arc sits above Piccolo in power, Trunks included. That said, he is very clearly below Vegeta in power, who actually managed to fight 18 for a bit before getting taken out. Speaking of Vegeta, he is the top of B tier and the 4th strongest character of the Android Saga. He shit-stomped 19 while messing around, was treated as blatantly superior to Piccolo, showed himself to be more powerful than Trunks, and has far too much hype around his power, surpassing a healthy Goku's for it to be ignored. A hypothetical healthy Goku peaks at this spot either above or below Vegeta, depending on how much you think the difference in their power is. Speaking on Vegeta's fight against 18 for a moment, Vegeta did surprisingly good here. Don't get me wrong, 18 still mid-diffed him at worst, but he kept up pretty well until he started getting tired and did some superficial damage to her. He's still not on her level at all, but as far as performances go, his fight against her is pretty impressive, all things considered. Speaking of number 4, did you know that only 4% of the people that watch this channel are subscribed? If that's you, make that not happen. Fix that. Right now. Please. Kicking off A tier and rounding out the top 3 is Android 18. She occupies a level of power beyond Vegeta's own, who established himself as the strongest asset that the Z Fighters had at this point in time. She's even stronger than her future counterpart, who regularly thrashed Trunks and killed the rest of the Z Fighters alongside her brother. The only reason for her placement below her brother is her lack of feats against any stronger opponents, and her supposed limit of her being unable to take on Piccolo, Vegeta, Trunks, Tien, and Krillin all at once, at least according to 17. Though, given the ease that 17 had in dealing with them, I doubt that 18 would have struggled much against all of them at once. Our number 2 ranking is Android 17, who casually dismantled Piccolo and the rest of the cast when they tried to help Vegeta. His attack on Gero was also a borderline execution, where he killed the man in 2 strikes with no effort. Looking slightly into the future, we know that 17's fight against a Super Namekian Piccolo shows us that he can contend with fighters far beyond Vegeta's own power at this point, with his infinite stamina and energy shields granting him a slight edge, despite Piccolo's great power in this fight. Since 18 has not shown anything on this level, 17 places above her. This shouldn't be too surprising, given what we see later on, but I'll just say this now and save those feats for the next video. Android 16 is the sole S tier of this ranking and sits at first place due to Gero's knowledge of his power and the belief that he would be capable of wiping out everyone that was at his lab. While Gero's calculation of the Z Fighter's strength was a little off, his knowledge of the strength that his creations possess should be some of the most accurate scaling that we have in the series. 16's ability to take on 17, 18, 2 Super Saiyans, Piccolo, Gero, and some humans is far greater than anything we see in the series up until this point, and puts him in an entirely different dimension from any other character on this list. Yeah, that is my ranking for the Android Saga. I have the tier list up now, so you can see what that looks like. The Goku ranking was a little weird. I didn't know if I wanted to go with a hypothetical Max Goku, a sick Goku, or a Yardrat Goku. I feel like a Yardrat Goku was like a happy middle ground. But yeah, no. So that's why I did that. If you liked what you saw, consider subscribing. And yeah, on to the Cell Saga.